morning, everybody, and welcome to the House Agriculture and Forestry Committee. I'm Representative Carolyn Partridge, and we are here today with Secretary Anson Tebbetts. We've heard that there is a plan, a proposal of the government, the governor and the administration has put out, and we wanted to hear a little bit more about that. I wanted to let the committee know that there is a joint meeting with the Senate Agriculture Committee for tomorrow morning. You might have seen a message that it was going to start at 8, but it's going to start at 8:30. Right, Linda? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. So, all right. I think everybody's here, and I will turn the floor over to Secretary Tebbetts. Anson, thank you so much for joining us today. Anson, you look like you're frozen. Anson. All righty then. Anybody know a good joke? Hi,
Why
Vicky.
does a chicken coop always have 2 doors?
I don't know why.
Because if it had 4 doors, it'd be a chicken sedan.
Oh, yeah. Good, perfect timing. There's Anson. Thank you. Hi, Anson. You know, Anson, maybe you want to turn your video off, and then we could hear you better, like at all. Well, while Anson's trying to figure that out, I hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. Vicky, I thought about you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I could
yes.
feel that. I could feel the thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So Anson's completely gone now. Maybe he'll call in. Today we are having a day here in Windham that feels like the Jersey Shore, actually. It was muggy when I woke up, and it's cooking out there. So go from about 20.
That'll take Michael O'Grady back to his youth.
Yeah, me too, actually. Although I was on the Jersey Shore before he was. All right, there's Anson. Hi, Mike. Do you wish you were back in Avalon Beach?
Yes, but not picking up trash like I would be at this time if I were.
Yeah, right, exactly. Good to see you, Mike. All right, Anson, you look much better and you're moving and stuff.
Okay, and that maybe I moved around a little bit, so hopefully that helped.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Sure. Well, it's great to be here, and it's great to have some decent weather. I know a lot of work is being done out in the field with farmers and such, so that's been encouraging. As you mentioned at the top, the governor unveiled a significant, and I just wanted to give you some highlights. Is $410 million, and we're using the COVID relief money from the CARES package that was sent out from Washington. So of that, there's a $50 million component aimed at dairy. 2 parts to this. One is a $40 million program for dairy farmers, those that milk cows, sheep, goats, etc. And then there's a $10 million component of this plan that focuses on value-added dairy. So those that make cheese, make butter, yogurt, maybe bottle milk, and make butter as well. So it's a value-added component, and that's a $10 million program. So the total package is $50 million. My understanding is we are going to introduce, along with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, a rather large bill. And our component of that will be in that overall bill for consideration. Just to maybe give you a few highlights of how we got here and why we think this is necessary. for dairy farmers and those in the dairy business. Last year, the annual average price paid per hundredweight was about $17.46 per hundredweight. Now, pre-COVID, things were looking actually pretty decent for farmers. We were headed to $20 milk, which is generally the cost of production. It varies but now because of that, we are forecasting a price per hundredweight will at best maybe be at $15 per hundredweight, and that even has the 3 months in there that price was pretty decent for farmers. So you can well imagine the price of milk has dropped dramatically. So we're looking at anywhere probably $2.50, $2.42 to $2.50. That's the forecast difference between 2019 and what's forecast for 2020. Sales that income lost to farmers on Vermont dairies could total as much as 65 million, we believe, in over from 19 to 20. So 65 million less income from farm milk sales on Vermont dairy. So that's pretty discouraging. And if you look at the average annual income loss per farm, looking at about $268,000. We figure because of what's happened with markets drying up. Mainly the markets were in the institutions, restaurants, coffee shops across the country, and under the federal system. There was not enough to make up in the stores and retail outlets, even though we did see some robust activity in there. It's certainly not enough to make up for those losses. So we've put together with the Agency of Commerce and the governor. The governor thought it was very important that we need to get through this period this summer so we can get to fall. And really what this is this is the survival. This is the survival mode for dairy farmers and those in value-added dairy. We want to survive and then be able to thrive at the end of this, but we need to get there. So we need to put some of these stimulus dollars out to the farms so they can pay their bills and stay in business. So that's sort of the overview.
Anson?
Of that.
Anson, your voice is a little bit sketchy still.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you turn off your camera, maybe we can hear you a little bit better. Thanks.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Much better, much better.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave the video off. So we've put together a program for the $40 million. And this the required agriculture practices that we have. We have four types of payment based on the operations and the size of those operations. So these are just estimates. If folks qualify, a small farm operation could receive about $42,000. A certified small farm operation could receive $60,000. A medium farm operation could receive $90,000 if they qualify. And a large farm operation could receive approximately $110,000 under these stimulus payments. Now, there's a lot of things to be determined here, but that's sort of what we've come up of as the four tiers of payments. And all farms, of course, would have to signify qualifying losses and additional costs or expenses related to COVID as required through the federal programs. So yes.
Anson, could you please repeat what the large farm operations would be eligible for?
Under this, if they qualify, $110,000 for large farm operations.
Thank you.
Now, value added, as you know, some of the first businesses that were really hurt by COVID were some of those value-added dairy products because of the closure of restaurants. 50% decline in sales due to restaurant closings. We've had as high as 95% of loss of markets as well as we calculate the losses in those. And keep in mind, a lot of these folks, that was their market, the restaurant, the cheese shops in some of our bigger markets of New York and Boston, Washington, Philadelphia. So those essentially dried up overnight, and they've had to change their modeling and how they do business, moving a lot to online, some moving to the curbside, adding all kinds of sales. The Vermont Cheese Council also shoring up and putting up a new online business for a number of them, but significant declines for cheese and also others in the value-added business as well. So that program, we have 6 tiers of payments based on the pounds that are processed per day. So it's a $10 million program for value-added dairies. And we have value-added dairy processors. If you did under 500 pounds per day, you could receive a $56,000 payment. And at the high end, over 500,000 pounds you'd process at the day could be as high as $185,000. So those payments are based on how many pounds are processed per day, either into value added. There's also a category.
Anson,
Yes.
excuse me.
Yes.
Would you mind just saying that again?
Yeah. So we have, these are the value added dairy processors.
Right.
So this is, we have 6 tiers of payment, and it's based on the pounds per day. So
Pounds of what?
of milk.
Okay, pounds of milk per day processed.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's converted into a value added, be it yogurt or cheese or cottage
Gotcha.
cheese, etc. So under $500 under this proposal per day, it would be 56,000. Then it goes 500 to 10,000 a day, goes to 70,000. 10,000 to 50,000 goes to 97,000. 50,000 to 100,000 goes to 127,000. And 100,000 to 500,000 is 157,000. And over 500,000 pounds per day, 185,000. We also have a frozen dessert category, but this does not include, creamy machines, et cetera. That would be a payment of $56,000. And of course, all this would be based on these processors qualifying for losses or some additional costs or expenses. Keep in mind, a lot of this, there's been a lot of extra costs involved, particularly in value added, and particularly in, changing markets. They're processing their packaging differently to meet demands, going out of more of the institutions, the bigger packaging, maybe going to retail, but also protecting their workers. There's been extra costs involved in protecting their workers with protective gear and equipment. Also, so there's been a lot of additional costs and expenses related to this, both on the processing side and as well as on the dairy side as well. So that's just a high level overview of the program. Our legal counsel, Steve Collier, has been drafting legislation and overall commerce package as it's rolled out this week.
Anson?
Yes.
I've had a request that you just repeat I'm sorry to do this to you, but
That's fine.
if you could repeat the dairy, the value added levels.
Yes.
So it's under 500 pounds per day.
Yeah.
56K.
Yeah. Under 500 per day is 56.5. 500 to 10,000 is 70,000.
Yep.
10,000 to 50,000 is 97,000. 50 to 100,000 is 127,000. 100 to 500,000 is 157. And over 500 or over 500,000 per day, 185,000. And then we have a separate category for frozen desserts of 56.5.
Okay. And so I've also had a question as to what one would have to do to qualify for the dairy payments. You said if they qualify, what would be the
Well,
the-
and this is one of the things that's is not hard to see the sort of the destruction. It would be the loss of the price of milk that they're being paid. For example, this month was the checks that arrived in May. There was really, you could start to see the dramatic decline in the price that they were paid for their product. So that would be one factor. Also, the extra expenses that may have been incurred on the farm as well would be another way to look at that. So both on the income loss, but also there may be some added expenses as well. And this, because we're looking at, some of the large farms are looking at, losses of more than $1 million for the year because of this. So, we know that this isn't going to make everyone whole, but what we need to do is we need to get some money to the farm to also, they may be qualifying for some of the federal help that's happening, and that particular program is being rolled out today through FSA. It's a different program, but they may be able to get some dollars through that. So, we're just trying to get through. We're just trying to get through, June, July, August, and September. And as America opens up again, as the world opens up again, we hope some of these markets will come back and the price of milk will rebound for them in the fall and the winter, provided we don't have another downturn in the COVID aspect of it.
Yeah. And when, what are some of the requirements in terms of timing? Because we know farms are going out of business, and it's not like they don't have expenses that they've already accrued. So if you were milking, is there a cutoff? If you were milking cows on March 1st or May 1st,
Yeah, we were looking at beginning, if you were milking cows on March 1st, and I believe we have to spend these dollars by the end of the year. So we're looking for anyone that was, processing or milking animals beginning on March 1st of this year.
Okay.
Sort of that's about the time things started to go south on this whole thing, is about that time. So those losses should be so March 1 to the end of the year, what we were focusing on.
Yeah. Okay. Committee members, do you have any additional questions about or Mike, do you have any? Okay, I see Vicky's hand is up. Vicky?
Excuse me. Anson, how do they apply? What's the process for the farmers, for me to tell my local farmers?
Yeah. So the first thing that has to happen is, you folks, the legislature, need to approve this, and the governor needs to sign it. And I know there's a pledge by everyone to try to get this program done as soon as possible. So while that's happening, we have been working behind the scenes, preparing farmers if it becomes a reality to get ready. So we're working on sending correspondence out to the farm community this week, saying, look, now's the time to make sure we have all the accurate information from you, and get all the tax forms that are going to be necessary for this. We're trying to make this a very simple and clean process, a simple application, and get that ready. And so as soon as this becomes law, then we can begin the process of actually, taking the applications, and then we hope to, issue checks as soon as possible after that. We are going to handle this at the agency, our component of it. We have about 760 dairy farmers that might qualify. And then we believe that on the processing side, there'd be about 140. So we think that's manageable on our side. We're working behind the scenes trying to prep people, get our staff ready, get the farm community ready. So if this does become law, we can start issuing payments as soon as possible. And it's important that these are grants. This is not a loan. These are grants to farmers and processors.
All right, John O'Brien not John O'Brien, John Bartholomew has his hand up.
You said this is part of a commerce bill. Do I remember correctly?
Yes, my understanding is that the process is going to, there's going to be a bill introduced in the commerce committees and economic development committees. And they, and this is something on your side to discuss, but my understanding is that they're going to maybe pull those apart and have, the ag committees and appropriations committees also weigh in on those as well. So it's sort of the process we're doing now, I think.
And do you know if it's starting in the House or the Senate?
It's unclear. I'm not sure on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have Sharon's hand up and Terry's hand up. Sharon?
Thank you. Anson, did I hear you say that the farmers and producers would need to have their taxes from last year available to make sure that they qualify?
I'm not sure for last year. I think what we're doing is the tax forms that they need to have because this income will be taxable going forward, I think is the plan. So we don't want to gather a lot of, complicated information from folks. We want to make this as, simple and straightforward as possible for folks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Terry.
Yeah, Anson, obviously, you know about it anyway, but on today's Facebook page for the Vermont Ag, they had another program where you could sign up for USDA funds, 16 million. I'm assuming that that's totally different than what we're talking about. And are they going to be able to overlap and not conflict with each other, or?
Yeah, I think some of those questions we need to address, but they are separate. So that's important for the farm community. Dairy farmers should be applying through their local FSA office for these particularly federal dollars that came from the United States Department of Agriculture. So they should be, going through those offices for that particular round. And then, as we get closer to unveiling the bill, maybe some of these, questions will be addressed on how folks would qualify under the state program as well. But it's important; these are two separate. One has been finalized, and then hopefully over the coming days, we'll get approval on this one, and then we can address those particular issues.
Yeah, the USDA one probably doesn't include processors. Is that just for dairy?
I think that one is for dairy farmers. Yeah, and that's and their formula is a little bit different than ours. I think there's some based on volume and production levels on that one particular one, but that one seems to be being well received in the dairy community going forward. And Wendy Wilton at FSA can explain that program. I know this today started the sign up for that.
Yeah, usually they send out notices to farmers, and they're pretty aware of what they need to do and the timeline and everything. So it's not like guesswork. We don't necessarily have to, let farmers know that that's happening, because usually FSA is pretty much on top of that stuff.
Yeah, this one has been in the works for a month to 6 weeks, I believe. So I think people are, they got the formula released last week, and then the application started today, and then from what USDA is saying, they hope to, start issuing payments within a week or so.
Thanks. Vicky, is your hand up again, or did you just forget? Okay, Vicky, and then Rodney.
Anson, you mentioned 160 or so farms would qualify the dairy aspect, and I know we have about 600-ish or a little more. What about those other? That's a fraction still of our farmers.
No.
And are you seeing some actually right now even closing? Do you have any information on that as well?
I may have dropped out. 760 dairy farms might qualify.
Oh,
and
okay.
and 140 processors. I may have dropped out in my and we did have 5 and this is about a week ago. We did have 5 dairy farmers leave in the month of May.
Great. Thank you. Rodney?
Yeah, federal program, their formula is based on the first 3 months of milk production, the first quarter. So it's a $1.14 per hundredweight of what you produced in January, February, and March. I have called my FSA office this morning and got a voicemail and waiting to see if they call me back.
Yeah, and I think if there's any dollars left over, they'll apply them to the remainder production, I think, as well. So.
All right. Any other questions for Anson at this moment? John O'Brien.
Anson, where do the dairy farmer workers fit into this discussion, especially the migrant community?
My understanding, that's in a separate discussion. The Agency of Administration has been working on this particular issue, and I think there's a separate avenue outside of this particular bill that's been working on that.
Great, thank you.
All right, Rodney, is your hand up again, or did you just not lower it? Okay, John, you want to lower your hand? Thanks. Anson, thank you for this information. Was there other stuff that you wanted to
No,
talk about?
I believe you heard the announcement about fairs and field days not being able to occur this year. One thing I think would be important, that there is a nonprofit component of the governor's plan for under commerce and community development. So we know that a number of those fairs and field days still have expenses and are going to sustain losses. We believe that they would qualify under some of those granting programs through commerce. So we're trying to message to the fair and field days community to look at that as a possible way to shore up some of the losses or getting through this particular year. It's also important to point out that it does not mean that events cannot happen at fairs and field days. The governor has talked about if people can get creative about holding an event, maybe a horse show. You could still have your horse show. Maybe you could still have a cattle show or something. And so it does not prohibit, events happening at some of the fairs and field days. So that's kind of one of those that we've been working on. I went to the Montpelier, just swung by briefly at the Montpelier Farmers Market on Saturday. Appears those are going well. We know a number of other ones are coming online in June. Sorry for the dog.
That's okay.
So that seems to be encouraging, and things are moving along on that front. So there's a lot going on, but those are sort of highlights that I can think of right now.
So Anson, I sit on the Capital Grants Committee, And we did have a meeting. It would seem to me that we would want to probably continue to allow the fairs that applied for those grants to move forward with their projects, because I think a lot of construction is being allowed now. Do you have any word for us on that?
Yeah, I think, we've issued a number of those grants, and I think those, those capital projects should, they can still go forward. And, my biggest worry is sort of on the operating side of some of these fairs and field days, because they're such important parts of our community, and we're trying to make sure that we can get some, let them know about those potential grants through the Commerce Agency's program, to look at those for possibly shoring up some challenging times coming forward over the next year on those fairs and field days.
Yeah, will the stipend money go out? That might help them out.
Yeah, I believe the stipend money has gone out, or has gone out already as well.
Good. Yeah, I was very disappointed. I was really hoping that maybe some of the fairs that are a little later in the year, September Tunbridge and others, might be able to go forward with some, requirements to wear masks and what have you, but it's very sad that we can't do that.
Yeah, we had a number of conversations with Secretary Smith, and we all met all the fair presidents and officers a couple weeks ago, and it was, I think it was just very challenging to hold a large gathering. And then a lot of the fair presidents were concerned about attendance and how they have to have a certain number of people come through the doors to, break even. And then there was a lot of discussion about insurance and contracts that were coming due very soon. So they had to make some decisions on that, so they did not, lose more money in returning tickets and et cetera. And also a number of the workers coming from other states was also, I think, a concern as well, of all the people coming that operate the rides and et cetera.
Right. Yeah. John O'Brien has his hand up. John?
Oh, just quickly, any word on Eastern states, or maybe even Freiburg, since that's sort of the last New England fair?
Right now, discussions that Eastern states is going forward. We have not heard otherwise. And that one again is the end of September as well. So right now that one is going forward. Of course, Massachusetts is in a little different, it's considered kind of a hot spot right now. Maybe things will be better by the end of September. But right now that fair is going forward, and I have not heard about Freiburg yet either.
Thanks, Anson. Terry's hand is up. Terry?
Well, I was just going to say, I had heard Eastern States was trying to figure out a way to have the cattle shows, and they talked to some of the 4-H people. It's what they were thinking. Well, they would have them come and show like on Friday, but then they had to go home, and then they would have to come back on like Sunday. And I know the state of Maine said, no, that's not going to work. They're not doing that. And I'm sure Vermont is going to be the same way, because you just can't truck cattle and calves around like that and expect to get a good result. So it's just remarkable that they could even consider that they could have Eastern states with 1 million of people there watching that. I mean, honestly, that's just not a safe thing to do. But I mean, that's what Addison County Field Days, I mean, they were basically the first ones the second one to cancel, and it takes $40,000 just to open the fair. And if you don't have anybody come, that takes the first, it's a 5-day fair. It takes 4 days of good attendance, and then you start making some money on the last day. And if you only have half the people come, you're not making any money. You're losing money every day, and it just it just got to be very, very problematic, and they didn't want to turn into a hotspot and, and be the ones to start up a new flare of the virus. So they decided that it's just, feasible just to say no. And actually, my wife was very glad to hear the governor say no fairs and field days, because it put some pressure on her to be the first ones. And I'm not going to say I can let her know about the economic development there about that, but I'm pretty sure Jackie is probably listening in on this, so I'm sure she'll let everybody know anyway. But it's good that they're at least considering that they are important parts of the Vermont economy, and hopefully they'll be back next year. I won't
Yeah.
guarantee every one of them, but most of them I'm sure will be back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's really sad that that they're not going to be able to operate. And I know some of the challenges that are involved with getting the midway there and the cost and what have you. And I worry about whether those midway rides companies are going to even be able to stay in business through this. I know some of the southern states have opened up, and hopefully they will not get a second wave of the virus, but it's really concerning. So any other questions for Anson about this? We're going to also meet with you tomorrow, Anson.
Yes.
Tomorrow morning, 8:30.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah, and will it be sort of a similar presentation, or will there be additional information?
I think Steve will join us. Steve Collier, our legislative counsel, and Allison Eastman will be on as well.
Good, great. One thing, while we have you, I mean, are you able to stay with us for another few minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, Sharon has your hand up, and then John O'Brien brought up an issue that he heard from one of his constituents yesterday about the farmers market, and maybe he could have a chance to say a few words about that. But Sharon, your hand's up.
Thank you. Will your testimony tomorrow be about other food system sectors, or will it also be focusing on the dairy sector?
I think it will be focused on the economic recovery package that we have outlined.
Okay.
Fantastic. John, did you want to say, you sent me an email, and you got an email from somebody, and since we have Anson, it might be helpful to hear. And I don't know whether it's state guidance that's a problem or local guidance. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Yeah, I got an email from there's a old distinguished, it's been going probably 20 years now, market garden farm in Tunbridge, and they do a bunch of farmers markets. I think Waitsfield or the Mad River, they do one, and they even go down to Boston. But the Waitsfield one they just did, they were hugely disappointed at. It was they said it was incredibly dead, and the continued hoops you had to jump through for farmers markets for the vendors, they felt was causing a lot of problems just for the volume and the customers, in that they could look over to a Shaw's, I guess, in Waitsfield, and you can go in there and buy spinach and walk out, and whereas at a farmer's market there are all these complicated procedures you have to go through to do this exact same thing. And they just felt like if this continues on, both as a vendor and as customers, they just felt that farmers markets are going to be hurting. And maybe that's not true at all farmers markets, but it's certainly they have a lot of experience with farmers markets, and they felt that this particular one was really, really bad.
Well, thank you for the feedback. I don't, if you want to, I don't know how to, we're trying to keep everybody safe and we know there are challenges with it, and we know there's some mitigation that has to be done. And the Montpelier ones seem to be very active, but maybe that's just a different audience, different space.
Well, and I wonder if if the local farmers market board or whatever was overseeing put in some additional requirements. It would be, John, it would be helpful to know a little bit more from your constituent, what were some of the guidelines that they were following there in Waitsfield? Yeah. So we'd have a little bit more
Right.
information.
I'll find out, but it just from the email, it sounded like things like no change, for example, like, it all had to sort of be prepaid and or exact change. And I can find out, why, if they felt that was the reason, or it's just so much easier to go into a supermarket and buy your produce than it is to go to a farmer's market and get the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. I was at my sister's in Fairhaven, or Castleton. She lives in Castleton, and she told me. I said, well, I might stop by the Shaws there in Fairhaven, and she said, well, I'll tell you what, it is Saturday, and if it's too crowded in the store, they don't let you in. So I said, well, I'm not going to be doing that then. It was hot and I was tired. So anyway, Rodney has his hand up. Rodney?
Yeah, I just was wondering if this was just the Waitsfield Farmers Market, or has he been to others that are the same way, with the same regulations, and yeah, I know some of the other bot stores, they count the people coming in, and at a certain point, they gotta wait till people leave before they let more in. That is happening. I just wondered if the farmers market issue is just Waitsfield, or if he's running into this.
And Waitsfield, and I'm not completely familiar with the clientele of Waitsfield, but we're still not allowing visitors to come to those mountain towns. And Waitsfield, Warren, Fayston could be one of those communities who the farmers market in the past could be relying on some visitors that are staying in Vermont and may go there. So the traffic may be down a little bit with those. And I'm not sure if, how active the downtown area with some of our, other establishments being closed or modified as well. So there could be an impact, as well as just the number of folks that are in the Mad River Valley as well, that could be impacting that particular market. But clearly there's certain, new things that have to be followed, and there's some new expenses and some spacing issues, but pretty much all the products, the only thing that's different is no entertainment and no sampling.
Yeah. And I actually do want to thank the agency and you, Anson, and others who worked on getting the farmers markets open fairly quickly. We did have Mike O'Grady write a number of letters, thank goodness for Mike, that we ended up never sending, because you did move very quickly on this issue. So we thank you for that. And John, if you want to get some additional information about the details, that might be really helpful so we can understand a little bit better.
Yep. And I think if any of the other committee members have heard from, their local farmers markets, whether it's good stories or it's, never been deader, let's all maybe do some research.
Yeah, I'll look into Brattleboro. That's another one that, a lot of locals go to. It is right off the highway, right off 91. So it could be visited by visitors, but I'll make some inquiries to see how Brattleboro is doing. And Anson, you said Montpelier was good? this week?
It seemed to be, they're in a new space this year. They're actually using state property. It's right behind the Agency of Agriculture off State Street. And, they seem to like it. One good thing is that there's a lot of room there in that parking lot. So I think it helped with spacing and so forth. So it seemed like it was going okay. Of course, I'm not taking in the money. I don't know about sales and whatever, but they like the space. It seems to be, wide open. It's not as close to downtown as in the past, but a lot of things in downtown are a little bit different under this circumstance as well. So, and then where some of the other markets are going to be opening up in June. I think Burlington's 9 or 10 days away from opening up their operation. So it'll be interesting to see how people react to that as well.
Mhm. Great. Good. Are there any other questions for Anson? Well, we really don't have anything else to discuss today. And unless there's something that someone would like to bring up, we can end this meeting a little bit earlier than we typically would. Okay, Rodney's hand is up. Rodney?
Yeah, this is just a general question. As chair, have you heard any thoughts of when we're going to be getting done this session? 'Cause I'm going to be spending more time in the hayfield pretty soon. 2 days.
Yeah, me too. So I think I've heard that we might, and maybe Mike O'Grady has more information about this, but I think what I've heard is toward the end of June, we might wrap things up. And then at some point come back in August. Mike, can you give us any more information about this?
Sure, just kind of the technical functioning. In order, you need to pass a budget bill by July 1, and that means you need to get the bill to the governor approximately 5 days before July 1. It can be sooner if the governor agrees to that, but generally the Constitution provides for 5 days. So you should probably expect to be in session up until that third week of June, if not a little bit later. And then I've been told, although it's not finalized, that then the body will take a break of some kind and then come back in August and September to reassess the economic scenario and to pass a final appropriations bill for FY21. So that's my understanding. There's probably more detail and nuance that your leadership could provide.
Great, thanks, Mike. Yeah, that's essentially what I've heard. John O'Brien's hand is up.
Just along those lines in the heads up department, can we get an update maybe on the bills we've been working on and have now passed out to the Senate, where they might be going, and also what we might expect from the Senate into our committee? And maybe Carolyn and Mike and Linda know more on that. Well,
Mike, do you want to comment? We did take some testimony on S-180, which is the Pesticide Advisory Council, and we talked about coming up with potentially a different scenario in terms of council. Maybe I think Carrie suggested an Ag Innovation Council, and so Jared Carpenter expressed an interest in that. Mike, what else? They have our housekeeping bill, and yeah, and they have our tree warden bill now, and there's one left to go, and that is the humane officer language. which I am hoping that John Bartholomew is going to be asked to report any day now. I haven't heard. But typically I find that kind of information out on Wednesday afternoons. So Mike, do you want to weigh in here?
Sure. So the Senate committee has, they did they've taken three meetings on H656. One was just a very high level, just summarize it. The second was a walkthrough, but they ran out of time. The third was another walkthrough, but they also ran out of time. I am supposed to finish up the walkthrough today as soon as they get off the floor, around 11. I only have feral pigs and hemp left to walk them through. They seem very amenable to the bill so far. Fish and Wildlife and the Agency of Ag came in and asked for a couple of tweaks to the feral pig language. They're just minor. And that's all I know about 656.
Okay, thanks.
As to the others, I don't even think tree wardens has been referred to them yet. I don't think it's there yet. And so it'll probably go to them today. And so I have no knowledge of what they plan to do with tree wardens.
Michael, will it go to Senate Ag or will it go to Natural Resources, do you think?
That's it. It might even go to government ops.
Oh,
Let me check. It may have already been referred and it's just not in their committee.
okay. Thanks for doing
No,
that.
it hasn't been referred yet.
Okay.
It just hasn't gotten there yet.
Okay. Okay, John O'Brien's hand is up and then John Bartholomew.
And besides 180, does the Senate, are they sending anything our way?
They sent you hemp, which you sent back to them on 656. They had focused on a school nutrition bill, which I don't believe will go to your committee. I think if it goes anywhere, it will go to the education committee. And they had planned to do a dairy bill, but COVID kind of torpedoed their intentions on that. So the S180 is probably what you are going to get from them.
Okay, thanks. All right, John Bartholomew.
There was some discussion about how long the House would be in session and take a break, but what about the Ag Committee? Are we going to continue to meet through that whole period or just as needed?
What would you like to do? I know you'd probably really like to continue to meet.
It doesn't seem to make sense to meet if we don't have anything to do other than to see your lovely faces.
Yeah, it's nice to see you all. I missed you. We'll play it by ear. You know, if we need to meet, we'll meet. We have these time slots. We don't have to meet if there's nothing to talk about. I think we probably need to come up with a response regarding S180 to send back to them. And, you know, we will be looking at the governor's proposal that Anson has been so kind to spend time with us today and tomorrow talking about. And so we'll probably be asked to weigh in on that. Mike O'Grady, can you think of anything else?
I think you will potentially see other agricultural assistance language in whatever the Senate works on. They have been working on a bill that goes beyond just dairy or value-added dairy and looking at other farms that may have experienced a loss, vegetable, cattle, beef, poultry, etc., due to COVID. They are also, as referenced by Representative O'Brien, looking at a migrant, or really, it's not just migrant, it's about farm worker retention. They've heard some testimony that farms are so economically stressed that they've had to let employees go. And so they have a program that's kind of a farm worker retention program for those farm workers who didn't receive a stimulus payment under CARES Act funds, to kind of try to prop up those workers and keep them on the farm. And then they're talking about things such as how to strengthen the food system, how to shore up nutrition programs, whether it's going to be food banks or others. So I would expect that you'll see some of that come back from the Senate.
Okay, so we'll kind of monitor that. And given what you've told us about John O'Brien today regarding your farmer, I in your email or his email, it said he had plenty of spinach if somebody wanted it. I wish I was closer. I'd drive up and get some. But that may be an important thing if they're going to be including vegetable farmers in part of this recovery package. So, and Mike O'Grady, I'm assuming that if the governor's aid package to dairy farmers goes forward, then Bobby will not be pushing the idea that they had regarding the dairy assistance program.
From what I heard from Secretary Tebbets, what they're proposing is basically what the Senate has proposed, just with significantly higher amounts.
Right.
The categories are the same categories. The requirement to certify or self-certify that you had losses or expenses, that's probably just the administration hewing very close to the Treasury guidance. I don't think that's actually necessary, but it's probably a bootstrap thing just to make sure that if there is a single audit of that grant, that the agency can say that the farm self-certified loss or expense due to COVID. So the rest of it sounds pretty similar to what the Senate has already worked on.
Okay, thank you. John Bartholomew, do you have more questions? Your hand is still up. Okay, thanks. And Terry has his hand up. Terry?
I was just wondering if anybody's heard any more about the Jamaican workers for the apple picking, whether they're going to be allowed to come in. I know there's some here already, but I don't know if there's any restrictions on the number or things like that. I mean, that's kind of important in my town.
Yeah, well, Allison's going to be on the call tomorrow. Mike, have you heard anything about that? Allison will be on tomorrow. She might, or maybe Anson, anyone can chime in here.
Probably Allison would be the best person, I guess.
Yeah.
She knows more about the Jamaican workers than anybody in the world, I think. So.
Right. Yeah. Her former business was critical in that. Yeah.
I'll ask her tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
It's Anson. I'll have Allison check in on it for you.
Yeah.
Fantastic,
okay, thank you.
Anson. Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? John O'Brien.
So at this point, I mean, if any issues came up that we'd need a committee bill for, that's the sort of thing that, we wouldn't have to worry about crossover, et cetera, right? We could potentially craft something that had an eye on, say, the skinny budget, or, you know, down the road on the bigger budget. Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, Mike O'Grady, that's probably more of a question for you. I can't remember if there was a limit on committee bills or not.
Yeah, so you're already past the rules deadline for committee bills, but if you just go to the rules committee and ask for a suspension, they have been allowing that. For example, House said the continuation of the deadline for lead testing in schools and childcare facilities. They got a suspension to allow them to introduce that as a committee bill.
Yeah.
So you just need to ask rules for that approval.
Yeah, I think we know somebody on rules too.
That doesn't mean I have any special influence to get the stuff approved.
Right. Any other questions or topics that you want to talk about right now? I don't see any hands. So I think what we'll do is we'll wrap this up a little bit early, and we'll make up for it tomorrow morning by having a meeting at 8:30. Linda will send out an invitation for that, and please hop on about 15 minutes early so that we know you're there, and we'll make up for our additional, our one less hour today. I'm going to go out and transplant strawberry plants. So I hope you all have a great day, and take care and stay safe, stay home. All right, Linda, you can take us out.